is Adam Golov, Marketing and Communications Manager at Data Conversion Laboratory, and I will be your moderator today. Before we get started, I want to let you know we will allow time at the end of this webinar for questions and answers, so please write your questions in the chat area as they come to mind. If we don't have time to answer them all, we will make them available on our website. Also, there will be 3 polls throughout today's webinar. For those of you who are not familiar with DCL, we convert and organize content to create electronic documents, populate databases, publish on the web, and basically get it ready for tomorrow's technology. DCL services help you refine your document conversion strategy, identify document redundancy, extract metadata, and transform legacy and future documents for real needs, today and in the future. DCL serves a broad client base spanning all industries. Today we are thrilled to introduce Joan Lasselle, President, Lasselle-Ramsay, and Amber Swope, DITA Specialist of DITA Strategies. Joan is President of Lasselle-Ramsay and has over 25 years experience designing and developing a new product content and training for high-tech, healthcare, finance, and insurance industries. Since 2000, Lasselle-Ramsay has worked with their clients to help them move to the use of XML structured content to help streamline the development of content and customize output in multiple forms and formats. Joan is a past member of the Content Management Professionals and a regular contributor at industry conferences. Joan holds a Master's of Education from the University of Oregon. Amber is an internationally recognized expert on the Darwin information typing architecture, who specializes in helping teams design and implement unified content development environments for XML content. These environments provide custom integrated support for authoring, storing, publishing, and localizing content. With over 20 years of experience in the information development field and 9 years of DITA expertise, Amber helps teams develop and optimize their environments to improve efficiency and reduce costs. In addition to co-authoring the DITA maturity model, Amber has authored numerous papers and articles on information design, development, and architecture and presented at leading industry conferences. Amber holds a Master's in Technical and Professional Writing and a Certificate in Computer Technical Writing from Northeastern University. Without further ado, welcome Joan and Amber.
So thank you, Adam. And hi, everyone. This is Joan Lasselle, and I want to welcome you as well. We really appreciate you taking the time to join us today. As learning and information professionals today, we're all faced with change and complexity and the need to meet increasingly demanding customer expectations, whether those customers are internal or external. These factors mean that learning is more important than ever, and it also means that the old models are changing. Today, Amber and I want to share a new model for developing and delivering learning content. We believe this model can help you meet the challenges you face today. But before we start, we'd like to do a short poll to learn who is on the call. Adam, do you want to put that poll up? It's always helpful to understand your point of view, so we'd like to know if you're a training professional or represent another functional area, and if you're a manager or an individual contributor. So if you could just respond to the poll. Do you see people responding?
Yes, Joan, we have about 50%. Oh, real quick, we're about 68% already voted.
Okay.
Right now we're at 70%.
And can you tell us, Adam, where it looks like people are coming in?
Sure. Right now, 42% are either technical documentation or other functional manager. 36% are technical writer but not communications. 16% is instructional designer, and about 4% is training manager. Right now we have a little over a minute has gone by with 74% of the attendees have voted.
Okay, so it looks like we have a mix of folks that are joining us.
Just let me know when you're ready for me to close it.
Okay, why don't you let us know the results?
Sure, I'm closing it now. And the results are 44% are technical documents or other functional managers, and 36% are technical writers, not communication. 16% are instructional designers, and 4% are training managers.
Okay, so we actually have a few more people that are from technical communication than we have from learning, and so you're probably going to be a little more familiar with some of the concepts that we have, but what we hope is that you're going to see how and hear how those concepts can help move you into a new learning model. So let's get started. And is the slide advancing? It's not on my screen, Adam, so there we go. Okay. So when we talk about training today, we mean much more than just the book and the class. There's a wide variety of deliverables and types of programs. Certainly, classroom training, also known as ILT, is still an important component, but e-learning continues to grow, and performance support tools help reinforce structured classes. The rise in social media supports informal learning. There's coaching and mentoring, which has been around for a long time, as well as OJT or on-the-job training. Recently, MOOCs have been changing the face of higher education. And when it comes to learning today, you can see that there's lots to talk about. Today, Amber and I are not going to take on this entire landscape. We want to focus on an approach for developing learning content for defined programs such as ILT, e-learning, and performance support solutions. We believe the approach that we're going to present can help you meet some of the challenges that you're facing today. Did the slide advance, Adam? There we go. Okay. So what are some of those challenges? First, learning happens everywhere in the enterprise, and it happens all the time. When a new employee joins a company, they receive training. When a new application or tool is implemented, people have to be trained. New business processes and procedures require learning programs to ensure they are adopted. Learning is a key success factor for any change initiative. In a time of nonstop change and increasing complexity, training is essential to keep people up to date. But with this need for learning and lots of different types of learning comes fragmentation. It's hard to stay on top of all the programs. And learners are changing too. As they adopt tablets and smartphones, mobility is increasing in importance. We know the closer we can deliver training to the time when it will be used, the more effective it will be. Getting learning onto mobile devices is key. The pace of change is increasing, and that means learning programs cannot be tied to large curriculums that are difficult to maintain and keep up to date. Learning needs to be flexible, it needs to be modular so that it's up to date and it aligns with competency models. Not all learners are the same. They want the information and the learning they need. One size just simply doesn't fit all. Learning has to adapt to learners' needs. And of course, many times content needs to be translated. And so we want to share that Amber and I are not the only ones that feel this way. Industry leaders share our perspective. Let's take a look at what some of them are saying. Is this moving forward, Adam? I'm not. There we go. Okay. So in 2013, a study by Gartner pointed out that in 2018, and that's not so far in the future, 70% of professionals will conduct their work on personal smart devices. That means learning has to be available on those devices. So mobility and getting information out onto those types of devices is critical. We can't assume that people are always sitting at a workstation to take in e-learning. And also, Julia Freeland echoes the need for modular, flexible learning programs. it's becoming more and more difficult to send people out away from their jobs for week-long boot camps. Learning needs to be on demand, and it needs to be immediate. And with the need for immediate learning and a lot of different programs and focused and targeted information that's modular, there's the risk of fragmentation and the risk of redundancy. When there isn't an integrated architecture and everyone is doing their own thing, it's hard to know what's going on throughout the enterprise. It's a chance that there's a lot of redundancy and a lot of duplication of effort. So let's see, these are some of the challenges that we see and that are echoed by industry professionals. Let's hear from you. Adam, do you want to put up that second poll? And let's see what some of your challenges are and what you're finding. So Adam, I'm not seeing the poll. Are you able to put that up? There we go. Okay, so on the challenges, what are your top challenges today? So select all that apply. You can select more than one. So one is translation. Are you finding it a need to really translate all of your content? And what about content quality? Is that an issue for you? Is the content redundant? Is it out of date? Is it inconsistent? Is that causing problems for your learners? Are they seeing one thing in your learning content and something else in your technical communication content, for example? What about multiple platforms for learning content? Is that your biggest issue and what's keeping you up at night? Are you worried about getting information out onto mobile devices? And is it the right information to get on the mobile devices? You don't want to do just a straight conversion of all of the content. That might not be right for your learners. Flexibility. You have set curriculums that potentially have been around for a long period of time, and it's hard to get them to be flexible and modularized so that you can get them out, you can customize them, you can personalize them, you can target the content for different types of users and potentially different industries. And again, mobility, same thing with multiple platforms, really, the need to address multiple platforms and a mobile workforce. So Adam, how's the response coming? So Adam, I'm not able to hear you. Are you speaking? Can you send me a chat? So I just have to let you all know that I'm not able to hear Adam, so I'll assume that the answers are in and that I can move ahead.
Hey, Joan. Hey, Joan. Sorry about that. I had a little technical difficulties.
Okay.
So here we go. 80% of the respondents had said content quality, redundancy, out of date was their top challenge. There was a tie. 50% said multiple platforms for learning content, as well as mobility, the need to address mobile platforms. 43% indicated flexibility. Long courses are hard to mobilize, I believe that says. And then the last one was 20% for translation.
Okay, great. All right, so so we definitely are going to be addressing that redundancy issue and how to keep things up to date. So one of the things that can happen when you have all these challenges is that you can feel that you're being constrained by the old model and the old way of doing things. And I think, Adam, I'm going to ask you to advance the slide because I'm not being successful doing that. There we go. So is the box constraining you? Are you locked into using technology, to using methodologies, processes, and procedures that are making it hard for you to keep your content up to date, making it difficult for you to get it out onto different devices. A lot of that can come from just the way that you're working. And if you're working with a tool set and working with processes and procedures that are not too different from what you were doing in the 90s or even in 2000, then you're probably going to be having a difficult time keeping things up to date and being effective. So how do you deliver content as ILT, e-learning, and mobile learning so that it is effective? How do you keep it up to date and aligned with those different formats? How can you modularize the information and give learners the personal experience that they want? If your approaches are not working, how do you get out of the box? What we want to talk about today is really an approach that has 5 key components: instructional design, a common source or repository, structured content, metadata, and XML. I'm going to talk about why those components are needed, and then Amber's going to tell you how to use DITA as an architecture to implement them. And the first one is instructional design. Our new approach doesn't diminish the need for good instructional design. In fact, in our approach, instructional design is even more important. If we want to improve the customer experience and deliver higher value learning, better courses are key. That's the place we need to start. We need to know what works. We need to know what drives performance for the learner and results for the business. When we know that and are clear about that, then we fit the technology around it. The technology enables delivering the content. Instructional design uses learning and performance objectives. These objectives need to align with learner expectations and with the business goals, and they also need to align with the content. As learning becomes modular to address flexibility and is delivered in multiple formats, you always need to link back to the objectives that are the cornerstone of instructional design. The same is true of assessments. Objectives, content, and assessment questions need to align. When the objective changes, the content and the questions will need to change as well. And when you have multiple programs, that becomes very difficult to do. To be successful, you need to know who needs what when, so you can target your content. That's the way that you achieve the results that you want. So the next thing is really a common source. Content reuse is one of the most compelling business drivers for an XML and DITA content strategy and adoption. Learning professionals can eliminate the need to recreate content that's often associated with delivering the same information in multiple forms and formats. Redundant effort is one of the most expensive problems in creating custom content. Single sourcing content from a common source allows you to store content components and assets in a central repository so they can be assembled and repackaged in new and different ways to address learners' needs in modular, flexible, and on-demand learning programs. When the content is constantly changing, using a common source drives cost efficiencies and maintenance as well. You only have to update the content in one place, replacing labor-intensive manual processes. But simply storing information in a common repository is only part of the story. The content needs to be structured as well. So what is structured content? Well, first of all, it's modular and not linear. It's a standardized approach for content elements and content types that follows a consistent pattern. For example, content that tells learners how to do something is task-based information. In learning, task information can be found in demos, procedures, labs, exercises. If they are developed as standalone topics, they can often be reused and repurposed. When you develop structured content, you need to analyze your content to determine the purpose of that content. Is it reference information? Is it concept information? Is it a process or a procedure? When each of these topics or content types follows a consistent model, they can be used as building blocks for various types of courses. and they can be reused and repurposed for multiple deliverables. The same topics can be grouped through a map to produce different deliverables to give you flexibility and adaptability today's learners are demanding. Now that you've got all the topics, however, how do you organize them and find them? And that's where our third component comes in. Fourth is metadata. If you're writing content as standalone topics and storing it in a common source, how are you able to find the information so you can reuse and repurpose it? How do you organize it? One of the ways to do that is with metadata. So metadata is both structural to help you categorize and organize topics. It's also descriptive to help you find and retrieve content. It helps you find information by relevant criteria. When you create your content, you want to identify relevant information, just like in a library where you can find a book by catalog number, by author, by title. You'll need metadata to find the content that you have created. The basis of this whole approach is getting your content into XML. In order to get the results, you need an underlying technology, and in this case, it's XML. So you see that we've got all of our content structured and organized. We've got it stored in a content repository. How do we get it from XML out to all these various platforms and in different forms and formats? And that's with transformations. Transformations are a key part of an XML strategy. The content is stored centrally and written as components, and it can be mixed and matched for various outputs, but you need custom transforms to get the output you need. You need a way to transform the XML content so it can be output in multiple forms and formats. So those are our 5 key components of our model. I've talked about what they are, and now Amber is going to tell you how to use DITA as an architecture to implement this new model.
Thanks, Joan. Adam, could you please start the next poll, please? So I can talk about DITA all day, and for those of you who have met me, I probably have talked to you about DITA all day. But what I need to know before I start is how much do you know about DITA? Do you simply know how to spell it? Could you hold a conversation on it? Do you use it every day? Or have you designed an implementation and you're looking at more for an architectural or detailed type of information? I can tailor my portion of this discussion to hopefully some type of a common learning level here. And I look forward to Adam telling me what the results are.
Sure, Amber. So right now we have a little bit over about 82% of people have already voted, and 38% have indicated they know how to implement it. There's a tie with 22% have indicated they know how to spell it, as well as how to discuss it, and 19% have indicated they know how to use it.
Okay, great.
And at this point we've had 82% have voted. Should I close it at this point?
I think that's good enough. That helps me understand. I have to say I'm excited by that number of implementation folks. I haven't had that high a number for quite a while, so that's quite good to see. All right, so I'm hoping that my ability to, oh, there we go. So first of all, what is DITA? For those of you who know how to spell it, it does mean the Darwin Information Typing Architecture. And what is interesting about DITA is that it is modular, it's structured, and it's an XML framework based on topics. And as the name implies, it's an architecture. So I'll start from the top. Darwin Information Typing Architecture, Darwin because it allows you to evolve. The reality is we don't know what our content needs to look like a year from now, and we can't anticipate content structures that we might need for delivery, or let's say your company acquires another company and you need to accommodate new content types. DITA supports extension via a mechanism called specialization. This is different than having to go create custom proprietary code. You can simply extend the DITA base to evolve and create the structure that you need. Typing is around what Joan alluded to, which is there are different types of content. Concept, task, reference are the base topic types in DITA. It has been extended through the specialization mechanism to include several other types, including specialization for the machine industry that has a lot of safety and parts-related elements in it, glossary topics, and then the learning and training suite of specializations that I will be talking about when I go to the learning objectives portion of this talk. And it's an architecture. DITA is not a tool. It is not a tool that you go out and buy. It is an architecture. And in order to use it, you would need to decide what your requirements would be. And there are any number of vendors out there who provide many different tiers of support for creating and storing and then publishing your content. And because it is XML, once you put it into the source, you have to have a transform to get it out. So that is a key part of it, is making sure that you can leverage the DITA Open Toolkit and be able to get the deliverables you need. Another key point about DITA is that it is an open standard. It is supported by OASIS. DITA 1.2 is the current released version. However, DITA 1.3 has been under active development and is now in final review, and we anticipate that it will be released by the end of the year. So if you are considering a new DITA implementation, I actively encourage you to learn about DITA 1.3, and if you are deploying in DITA in 2015, I would look at using 1.3. If you currently are using DITA, check out what DITA 1.3 has to offer. It might have some items in it that, such as MathML support and SVG support, that might be something that you could use. It is implemented by companies around the world for any number of types of content. It is not specific to software, hardware, or machinery. I've worked with publishers, medical device folks, insurance companies, hardware, software, electric companies. People who have content need to be able to structure it, find it, reuse it, and deliver it. So earlier, and during the introduction, Adam mentioned the DITA maturity model. Michael Priestley and I wrote this model. We created it in 2008 because we found that we had difficulty talking with people about what it meant to implement DITA. And so we said, well, let's make this easy. Let's give you a framework for that discussion. So the first point here is at the bottom, the lowest level of implementation is that you migrate your content into topics, and what you get is you get some basic single sourcing for your content. As you can see from this box, this presentation is going to focus on levels 2, 3, and 4. So at level 2, you take the time to reorganize your content so that you can reuse it, and that takes an additional level of investment based upon those topics that you created. Level 3 is where specialization comes in. The learning and training specializations are there, supported out of the box. You would adapt your formal content and architecture, identify how you will use these specializations, and what you'll get from that is quality and consistency that you didn't have in your unstructured environment. And then the fourth level is around translation and having a content management solution. This allows you to have automation and integration with other systems, such as, for instance, an LMS. If you have to generate courses and you want to have them automatically loaded into the LMS, you would need to integrate your content management system with your delivery pipelines, and that would give you some more speed and efficiency. So one of the things I'm going to talk briefly about are learning objectives. Joan mentioned them as one of the cornerstones of instructional design. And what they do is they set the expectation for the learner about what it is, what knowledge or skill that they will acquire as a result of the learning experience. This diagram shows the later version, there's two versions of Bloom's taxonomy, and DITA supports providing learning objectives in a number of ways. First of all, there are semantically identified elements that identify what learning objectives are. These elements are available in all the learning and training topics. However, as a person who uses them, I find that I use them most frequently in learning overview topics and in sometimes learning summary topics. What you can do is you can specify either single learning objectives or collections of learning objectives. You can reuse the same learning objective in multiple modules. So let's say you need to build a course and you need to be able to select between 3 different ways to teach somebody how to make toast. Well, hopefully they would remember how to do it. Well, maybe it's about down to memory as opposed to understanding. Well, I want to be able to know that if I try and assemble a module or a lesson, that if I have this learning objective, that I have content that I can just bring along with it. And so being able to identify individual learning objectives that you can individually store and track, as well as then reuse them and present them, is one of the ways that DITA allows you to have reuse around this core component of your architecture. So this example here shows a learning overview topic with some learning objectives in it. As you can see, I have an overview topic that says these are my objectives for the lesson. After completing this lesson, you'll be able to. And the learning group allows us to say, oh, we have multiple objectives. I could have stored these objectives separately and used a content reference to bring them in to this topic, thus giving me an additional level of reuse. I could use this topic as an entire unit in another module that might have different information associated with it that supports the same objectives, but maybe it's for a different audience or a different level of skill. And as you can see in the lower right, here is a screen capture from a course where I ran transform, and I took this topic, and here's what the topic looks like. Now, one of the things that XML gives you out of the box is a separation of your formatting from your source. In this case, I have my learning objectives are each presented with a bullet. They could be presented in any way that you want them to because they are semantically identified, and your transform combined with your style sheet could say, oh, when I see and process an LC objective element, do X to it. Maybe you make it in a different color. Maybe you make it all italics. Maybe whatever it is that your delivery pipeline requires, because it is semantically identified in the original source, you have additional processing power than you would if you just had this typed as a sentence or a list of bullets in a non-structured source such as Word or even PowerPoint. One of the other key items here that we talked about was having a common source. When people talk about reuse, a lot of times folks think, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be able to, I have to change everything I do to fit what you do. I like to think of reuse of a common source in a very different way. I like to think about it as the ability for me to be able to focus on what I'm trying to accomplish and not have to create common content that should just be there for me to use. So when I'm doing instructional design and I'm creating training, I don't want to have to go and describe the basic feature of what I'm trying to describe. That information should already be there. I should simply be able to have that information available via a topic map or a topic reference or a map reference to bring into my learning module. And I should be able to spend my time writing my learning objectives, writing my assessment, creating the exercises, and the other information should be there for me to leverage. DITA allows you to do this. I've mentioned two of the ways. I can either bring in a collection of topics as an entire module. Let's see, I need to have a course that is 80% the same as a different course, and I just bring in the first 8 modules and I change the last 2. Very easy to do with DITA. It's simply a map ref. Let's say I need to swap out some different questions because they aren't the right level of assessment within a module. I simply can change the topic reference, which is in the map that collects the module together, as a reference that says, oh, go get that file over there for me. I can change those out very easily. Content references and key references refer to the mechanisms that DITA supports that allow you to reference individual items of content within a topic. So, for instance, if I wanted to have a master topic for each of my learning objectives and then reference them into an overview, I can do that. And when the value of this is that when I need to go and change the learning objective, I go to the master, I make the change, and the change propagates to every reference throughout my content set. This means that when your content needs to change, you change it once, and you're done. You don't have to go and do that massive search and replace exercise of going and finding every instance of that content. Key references offer a level of abstraction above that where I can have a placeholder. And conditions are, some folks are familiar with the term of profiling, allow me to, in some, I could have two learning objectives and have a condition that it's really around the same item, the same knowledge that I want them to acquire, but they're worded differently because of, for instance, by audience. I could have an audience condition equal internal versus external, and then when I go and regenerate my pipeline, my content for the pipeline, I get the internal course or the external course. This is very powerful and allows you to really leverage your content. Additional items that you might want to use for reuse: product names, images, data specifications, terms and definitions, legal notices, safety information. I could go on, but I think you get the idea. So for reuse content, in this case, I had created a master list of product names, and in the module objectives, rather than me typing in Google Drive every time, what I did is I content referenced the keyword from my master list. This is incredibly helpful if you work in an environment where you do not necessarily own things like the product name, and someone who does own them may change them at the last minute, or change them at any time actually, and you need to be able to respond to that change, and you want to do it in one place. This allows me to say, let's say that Google changed it from Google Drive to Google Drive 2. I would change it here, and the change would propagate to all three of the instances that you see in the subjectives list. This is a very powerful mechanism. So one of the things we talked about briefly earlier was structured content. DITA has topic types and map types that are very structured. So for instance, the concept topic has a lot more flexibility, and that is there for explanatory or instructional information. It allows you to explain. It has the ability of sections. You can have lists and tables and all the resources that you might need in order to convey knowledge to someone. A task, on the other hand, is defined as a structure of a single set of steps. So if I want to go and reuse a task topic in an unstructured world, I don't know if I'm getting one set of steps or two sets of steps or how many levels deep they go with sub-steps. In DITA, it's very clear. You get one set of steps with its accompanying information that sets the context and prerequisites and any steps that have to happen afterwards. This is very helpful in terms of the fact that you can, if you can do the same task in more than one way, I can select the task topic that describes it the way that I need it, and I can bring it in, and I don't have to rewrite it. Reference topics are, again, more structured than concepts. They are made for presenting the factual information that people tend to use for looking up, such as data specifications and other referential type of information. Glossary topics, term definition, and they have a nice, robust framework for alternatives to words. So if you need to have synonyms, acronyms, abbreviations, other forms, and usage information, the glossary topic is designed to support that, so that if I'm developing a course and someone else has written a handbook or written a manual, I shouldn't redefine that term. I should be able to use the same glossary topic that they did, and therefore our users will get the same experience, they will get a consistent message, and I don't have to write it again. It's already there for me to use. The learning content, again, is structured, and it, like I said, the ability to have a learning objective, learning overviews, summaries, an assessment, these are all pieces of instructional design that we need to know what they are and how they looked, or we cannot reuse them. So here's an example of a task topic. Really quickly, here's how I sign into Google. As you see, it is a title, a body, a set of steps. And one of the things to notice is that it's not just a step. It's not just a list item. As you can see here, there is a command element, and the command element indicates that this is the imperative. There are additional elements that are available within each step, information, step result, step example. And I have teams say, do we have to use all those? And my answer is, do you ever want to provide them in a way visually that is distinct from each other? And if the answer is yes, then you need to take the time to break the content down to the semantic level of granularity that is appropriate. If you're going to deliver content to a learning device and you want to present a mobile device and you want to present a step with its a command and you want to present the entire procedure, your real estate is very small, particularly if you're doing this on a phone. So folks who do this, they usually have a mobile app and it presents the command, and they have an icon that allows them to say, oh, additional information, you press an icon, the text or the information, could be even an image, from the info element would appear. There's another for examples, there's another for results. This, if you do not take the time to avail yourself of the structure the task topic provides, you will not be able to leverage and optimize your delivery for these mobile devices, particularly the smaller screens. So, metadata strategy. I could talk about metadata all day, but I won't. What a taxonomy is simply a hierarchical collection of categories used to organize information. This is the definition by Darren L. Stewart from Building Enterprise Taxonomies, and it's the cleanest one that I've ever found, because a lot of folks hear the word taxonomy and they get all nervous and get worried that it's something incredibly sophisticated. It's simply a classification list. I see them a lot for product names, technology, user tasks, disclosure permissions, audience. These are very common values that you don't want just anybody saying, oh, I think I'm going to call it Fred and I'm going to call this one Bob. No, it's external versus internal because it means something to your business. DITA supports metadata, not just taxonomy, but metadata in a variety of ways. So first of all is in DITA 1.2 there is the ability to have subject scheme. And what subject scheme does is it allows you to specify your classification, and then you can apply in the different values from the classification to topic references in a map. And that level of abstraction is intentional because the same information may have different classification values in different contexts. The other, again, is conditions. I might want to say, oh, you could say that a condition value that the audience is external, or that it's for product Google Drive instead of Google Calendar. Those would be, you might want to conditionalize your content. You can also create and embed your own metadata using data elements directly out of the box, or you can specialize them if you need to do some type of specific metadata identification. So here's an example of where I have a section from a slide where I have my output class in the notes, and I have my instructor information and I have my student information. And in this case, if I have this topic and I generate, if I have it referenced in a map and I generate the student guide, the information from both the student guide should appear, but the instructor information should not. If I generate the same map but reset the condition to audience being instructor and student, or I could have my processing say, oh, if instructors get everything that students get, then I can use the exact same topic with no changes whatsoever to the content other than making sure the metadata is applied. And and be able to get out two very different. So the output here is from that topic. We have our guide where it says, oh, okay, here's how you do this. This is the student guide. And then the notes from the instructor's guide have the same information. So you can see that the instructor notes has the key point, and then it says, oh, from the student guide, here's the same context. And look that it's presented very differently. In one, it's italicized, and in the other, it is not. That formatting is handled through the transform with cascading style sheets. You saw the original source. It simply was identifying what it is, not how it looks. And this is the key to successful reuse. So XML for flexibility. We've talked about the benefits of being able to separate the formatting from the source. What this allows you to do is, first of all, it supports localization. And you might say, well, how does that support localization? Well, one of the very specific ways is if you are documenting software and you need to indicate file, new file from a cascading menu, that is represented very differently in pretty much every language. And for instance, DITA has an element set called menu cascade, and within it you have at least one, potentially more, UI controls. And the delimiter is then generated per language when you process this information through the transform. So for English, one of the most common delimiters that we see is the greater than sign. That is not the case in other places. So for specifically Japanese, they don't use a greater than sign. They use a set of brackets around the actual text, which of course looks very different in Japanese. You do not want to be paying somebody to manually remove your greater than signs and put in those brackets every time. If you simply use the menu cascade with the UI control appropriately, this will all happen automatically. Same with ambiguous things in English, such as italics. Italics could be used for introducing a new term. It could be used for emphasis. It could be used for a citation. It could be used for a foreign word. If you simply use italics, as soon as it goes to localization, they have no idea what that meant. If, on the other hand, you use the term element for new terms and you use the site element for the other resource name and you use a phrase to indicate that it's a foreign word, when it goes to localization, no manual work has to occur. The translator can say, oh, in German, this is how citations need to, I put the content in, and then they run it through the style sheet with the German, transform with the German style sheet, and it comes out as appropriate. Multi-channel publishing, the same information may look radically different depending on the pipeline that you're sending it to. So for instance, if I have a PDF and an EPUB, they could look pretty similar. If I have a PDF and I have an HTML file that appears on the internet, it could look completely different. Again, because you have the smaller units and you have the semantic granularity, you can optimize how it looks so that it looks the best it possibly can and be most effective per device and per channel or pipeline. In the context-specific delivery, this is my way of referring to being able to attach metadata, and so particularly in the case of learning, if I'm as a professional student, I should not have to go and take every single course. I should be able to leverage my life experience and be able to take a pre-assessment and go in and test and say, oh, of this course that needs to verify that you are qualified to do X, you can prove and demonstrate knowledge through the assessment of 6 of the 10 tasks that you would need to perform. I don't want to have to go and take units or lessons on those 6 tasks that I have already showed competency. I should be able to have a custom or a context-specific course that allows me to focus on the 4 items or the 4 tasks where I need to learn something to show improvement. And that is one of the things that XML does bring to the table, is that because you're in this source, you can put it out so that I can say, oh, not only do I only want these 4, but I want them to come through the LMS, and I want the associated vocabulary for those 4 units to come to a mobile app so that I can have a mobile app with flashcards on my phone so that I can start learning and being able to keep the content fresh in my mind even when I'm not logged into the LMS. Without this separation of the source from the content and the structure and the metadata and the granularity of the semantic identifiers, it is very difficult to accomplish these goals in the way that you can with XML. So again, a little bit more, first of all, I should have said, well, I was saying hello before, and now I'm saying goodbye, for example. Here is that Google topic I wanted to show you in Swedish. Notice the XML looks exactly the same. All that has changed are the words within. The UI controls are still identified as a UI control. The XREF is still identified as an XREF. I could run this through a transform with a Swedish style sheet, and if UI controls are flashing purple zebra stripes, and that's what's appropriate, that's what they would get. In English, they might just get boring, old, black font that, you know, in the same font and in the same color that as the rest of the text. This is what the separation and that semantic granularity gives you in terms of control. So, in summary, what Joan and I would like you to think about is looking at your training content and saying, wow, with the changing landscape that's out there and all the different ways people are saying that they want to learn and they want to have something that's custom, how can we do that, and how could XML help us? If you're working in an organization where they already have made an investment in DITA, or if you're working in an organization that's considering moving to XML and they're open on what architecture they want to use, I would highly recommend that you consider looking at what DITA brings to the table to say, is this a good architecture that would meet our needs so that we don't have to go and create our own and have to then have custom or proprietary tooling. The open standard gives you an opportunity to build off of a supported standard that is globally used across pretty much every industry, and you'd be able to, if you can work together, which of course is the biggest part of this, and implement your content into a single repository, then you can leverage existing content and really focus, instead of writing and rewriting the same information. A lot of the learning organizations I've worked with, their means of reusing now is they get a PDF or they get something from someone else, and or they take a screenshot or they copy and paste it, and they have no idea when that content changes. If you're in the same repository with the folks that are maintaining that content, you can reuse it directly, and then that frees you up to really focus on your learner needs, which in my mind means spending the time on having really good learning objectives, making sure that you can have that alignment so that you can have modular delivery. And as that student, don't make me take 10 lessons when I only need to take 4. Give me the ability to spend my time wisely, and I'll be happy to spend my money with you because you're not wasting my time, because that is my biggest commodity as a learner. So that was the end of the presentation. We have a little bit of time for questions, so I'm going to turn it back over to Adam.
Well, thank you, Joan and Amber. That very informative indeed. And right now, we're just waiting for some questions to come in, but I do have one, so please, I do apologize because I'm a little bit new in the DITA field. But the one would be is, can you tell us more about the upcoming DITA 1.3 and what it will bring to the table?
Oh, sure. Great question. The first thing is there are 2 changes, particularly in the learning and training space. The first is that there is a second module coming in that allows a broader structure for most of the interaction content to be able to have more block elements and to have more flexibility. The second is the existing learning map, the module map support, is fairly regimented. And folks who went to use it said, wow, you know, we agree that that is the desired ideal for learning structures, but we need something a bit more modular. So there is going to be another specialization of map, the flexibility for map that will be there. So the message is that for DITA 1.3 for training, it's gotten more powerful and more flexible. In addition, like I said, there's going to be MapML. There's going to be some increased scope control. There's troubleshooting, a topic. There is a release management domain coming in, so that if at the top of a topic you can indicate, you know, this has changed, here's the reason it changed. And those types of capabilities particularly are helpful for folks that do not have a tight integration from their repository with, for instance, their defect tracking system. Those are just kind of the highlights off the top of my head.
Thank you.
Is there a date for the release of that, Amber?
There's a tentative date, which is the end of the year in December, and I know that the under active development, it's under active development, and the TC is doing, you know, the spec is under review, and they're, you know, just catching the small little details. But as we all know, the devil is in the details, and they want to get it right.
Okay, great.
Well, thank you very much. Next question that's come in is, can you recommend a hands-on starter class for learning to use DITA, and then a way to practice it until I'm able to put it to use? There's no telling when I must use it, but I must learn how to use it.
There are some good courses out there, so there's a couple of options. There are sometimes if you Google DITA and DITA learning, or go to dita.xml.org, there is information out there on folks that are holding classes. I know that the University of Santa Cruz and the University of California, Santa Cruz sometimes offers a remote learning class. I know Portland State University has a DITA class. Those are the ones I know of on the West Coast. I'm sure there are others. And then there are again, seminars. There's some good books out there. If you want to give me, if you provide your name, I can send you an email with the books that I personally like, that I found to be the most helpful.
Excellent. Thank you. And the next question that's come in is, can you compare and contrast DocBook and DITA?
I certainly can. That's a great question. Both of them are XML standards, and both are supported by OASIS. The true difference is that DocBook, as its name suggests, is book-oriented and was designed significantly before DITA around being able to have XML for books. And it does not have the learning and training capabilities that DITA has. I know some folks that are not in need of the flexibility that DITA offers. There have also been some advances in DocBook for folks that have a huge investment in it to make it a bit more flexible, but it does not have the modular typed design that DITA has. And if that's important to you, and also, like I said, the learning and training support, then that would be a big differentiator.
Great. Thank you. One question that's come in is, what DITA book or books have you found helpful?
Of course, now that I have to actually name them, I can't remember the names for the actual books. I really like the book that Laura Bellamy and, of course I can't remember the other authors' names. I think it's called DITA Best Practices. And there's a nice DITA 101 book out there, and there's a DITA metrics book for folks that are looking to implement projects. Of course, I can never remember people's names, and I can't remember their names at
Amber, there's the next slide has both of our email addresses on it, and if folks would like to just email either one of us, we could get back with a kind of a short list of DITA books.
And that's a good point, that maybe for the next webinar we should just put a slide of resources available. But again, like I said,
idea.
DITA.xml.org is a great resource. It's where all the vendors and all the people who are in this space post information, and that's where information about things like other webinars and classes and tutorials would be available.
Excellent. One question that just came in is, how do you use structured content plus a styler to produce presentation material?
When you say presentation, do they mean slides?
Yes.
So there's a couple of different ways to do it. Joan and I actually like to use HTML5. I did a presentation in the past year where I wrote my content in DITA, and I actually ran the transform in front of the attendees, and it opened in my browser, and I did my slides. I'm a big fan of the HTML5 solution. There are a couple other solutions also available, and so this is a space where it's not that there aren't solutions. There's a couple out there that folks, because it's a newer space. Folks do ask me, can we transform from DITA into PowerPoint? You can, but it's the thing about PowerPoint is it's got a lot of proprietary styles and style sheets and things like that. So you would have to be pretty rigorous about how what it is you wanted it to be and align it. And so I've worked with some folks that are heading down that direction. But for the most part, it's just a different transform. I have one team that actually has a PDF that is on a landscape orientation. What that does not allow is for any type of animation, which the HTML5 does. So your options, there's several out there. You would need to look at your requirements and determine, is it straight text, or do I have animations, etc., that I need to present?
Well, thank you, Joan and Amber. Definitely a very informative webinar indeed. Everyone, I'd like to thank you on behalf of DCL and Joan and Amber for attending. You will be receiving emails from both DCL and Lasselle-Ramsay alerting you to future webinars. You can also visit both of our websites at www.dclab.com and www.lr.com. This concludes today's broadcast. Our next webinar will be taking place on Monday, June 30th at 1 p.m. titled Making Beautiful Books, presented by India Amos, Managing Editor of Print and Digital Production at CN Times Books, and Alan Lieberman, Special Projects Manager of Data Conversion Laboratory. Again, thank you everyone for attending. This concludes our webinar.